Well, it's time for your health segment, and like I mentioned earlier, tonight we will be focusing on visual impairment, given the statistics are showing that at least 10 million Kenyans are at risk of having a visual impairment, that is annually, and just about 500,000 Kenyans get treatment for eye ailment every year. So we are just trying to understand these numbers and look at how really can we be able to bring down the numbers, particularly for those eye ailments that are preventable and treatable to ensure that they don't get to the stage of blindness. And for more insights on this, joining me now in studio, we have with us Samson Waweru, who is the chairperson of the Kenya Society for the Blind. And interestingly, he's the youngest chairman that the society has ever had, at just 2 years shy of being 30. So it's good to also get to hear his story and what are some of the things that he's trying to do for the society and ensure that there is access for the blind. Thank you very much, Samson, for joining us this evening.
Thanks for having me here, Catherine.
Let's begin with your story. Were you born blind, or what happened?
Yes, I was born blind, but my left eye had a light perception, so I could perceive colors. I could see people, but not details. I could not identify the person, but maybe by their voice. But at least I could see, I could differentiate between the sun and darkness.
Sun and darkness.
Yes.
When did you stop seeing the sun?
At the age of 8, I developed a condition known as retinal detachment. Got me admitted to hospital for 9 days, Kenyatta National Hospital. Then that's where I was sent to Kenya Society for the Blind for advice on my education.
At 8 years old, that is when now you could not see anymore.
I couldn't see anymore.
What changed in your life? How was the experience?
It was very, I think it was desperate for me. I would say I was fighting for my sight. I couldn't believe one day when I woke up and it was gloomy. I couldn't see clearly. The little light perception I had was all gone. And this was terrifying, but at least I was a kid. Somehow I found it easy to let it go.
Did you keep asking your mom, why can't I see you? What stories that perhaps your parents tell you regarding that time of your life?
Okay, given that I had that eye condition since I was young, I didn't ask much. Actually, I thought that everyone was like me because I was a kid. So I could try and play with other kids just the same way they did. So I could only notice the difference when they would sometimes leave me out of some activities. That's when I would remember I have a problem with my sight.
All right. As you grew up, did you find out that this was a condition that perhaps would have been prevented, that you could still have been able to see in one eye?
Well, my condition was strange. It couldn't have been prevented.
Okay.
Retinal detachment is quite, it's quite complicated because you have to deal now with the cells, the rod cells and the cone cells in the retina, and where the retina attaches to the optic nerve. So I think restoring that even now, it's still not possible.
All right. Let's talk about you growing up and issues of access, education. How was your experience? What is your story?
Wow. I think I grew up in one of the humble backgrounds, in one of the suburbs of Kawangware, place called Riruta Satellite. So obviously I would go to a day school. That was Kilimani Primary School, just here at Adams Arcade. And getting there was really not easy, considering I was young. And I needed to get transport every day, needed to leave in the morning by 6, go back in the evening. Sometimes when it rains, it was hell. I would have to deal with mud, sometimes fall in pools of water, but I could manage somehow. I think by the time I got to class 4, I just opted to go for a boarding school. Yeah.
The commuting was becoming difficult.
It was becoming hectic. So when I got people to assist me go to school, especially the Koinonia community and my church, the Orthodox Church of Kenya, I was able now to go to school.
So who used to walk with you to school in the morning?
Well, at first, my mom took me for some days, but as days went by, we couldn't afford that transport. So she looked for some kids who also schooled in Kilimani, so they would go with me, and in the evening we would come back with them. Yeah.
What about now the education in itself? Were you using Braille, or what challenges were you facing in terms of your schoolwork?
Yes, I got introduced to Braille because by the time I was 8, I had already gotten to class 2. I was reading print with difficulties. So when I was totally out of sight, my sight went out, I was taken to, again to, I would say, nursery, where I started learning Braille again.
Because now you're learning afresh.
Yes,
again.
afresh. I have to conceptualize Braille, the dot, how to read with my fingers, and how to analyze each and every writing with on Braille. So I had to start all over again, and I didn't lose hope. I just started. Yeah.
If you look back and you look at the curriculum today and what you had when you were growing up, would you say there's been much growth in terms of advantages for those who are now studying Braille language and even access to schools?
Well, I think that is revolutionary, and that's what technology does. Today, talk of technology, we have digital literacy that is coming into the space. And the digital literacy is supposed to help the young visually impaired and blind kids be able to access content in digital format, what we call refreshable Braille, because what we used was manual. We used a paper and a metallic Braille machine, which was 6 kg. Now, imagine a young 6 kg, a young kid, 7 years old, carrying a 6 kg machine from one class to the other, and bulky paper, 200 pages, is around 3 kgs. So I think that was very, it was very difficult for us. So right now we have a device called the Orbit Reader. One of our partners is implementing it in Kenya, that is the Kilimanjaro Brain Trust. So what this does is a small gadget, almost the size of a phone, can be pocketed. It's electronic, very versatile. No need to use paper. You just need a flash disk. Do your content in Braille. The machine transforms it into print, and the teacher is able to understand what you're typing out and reading. Yeah. So that is the revolution that has come in one aspect. Another aspect is now the adaptive computer system that we use to communicate, and it's called a screen reading software, and the name is JAWS, Job Access with Speech. And what it does, it reads out loud what is on the screen, and all we have to understand is the keyboard commands for us to be able to use a computer comfortably like a sighted person. Yes.
But if we look at the, the statistics countrywide, how many children have access to, what you're talking about, the computers and the technology that is coming with it?
Right now, as a society, we are in the knowledge that we have over 45,000 school-going age children, but we are able to take 8,000 kids to school, and the 37,000 that are not going to school and they are of school-going age are in mashinani. They are in places where the communities have not had that blind peoples can be taken to school and learn. And that is the mandate that the society has been given by the act that establishes it, to reach out to these families and try and make sure these kids are placed in schools.
So to what extent have you been able to reach out to them? What do the numbers look like, the ones that you're targeting?
What you're doing, many partners are coming to the space. We are working with the Ministry of Education. Actually, they are they compose our council. They have a representative in our council, and they are in the copy of these details. We also have other partners who are taking initiative in making sure that the learning devices and the awareness that school kids who are blind and visually impaired need to go to school, the news is being taken out there, and we are hoping that more and more kids who are blind and visually impaired can see the doors of a classroom.
Do you still get cases where people are still hiding their children because they're blind, the stigma that comes around it?
Yeah, it's stigmatizing.
Yeah.
I think many parents, when they get a blind kid or any other child with disability, they are in denial. And they seem to be discouraged by their peers that no, because you have a child with disability, they cannot do anything, just keep them in the house. And so because of shame and stigmatization, they keep these kids at home, and they are unable to acquire a full living standards.
Let's talk about some of the cost implications that perhaps persons who are visually blind have to to go through, that you would perhaps be advocating for the government to do more to ensure that there is access, because not everyone can afford to take their children to school, because they're thinking who is going to walk them to school, issues about safety when they want to travel, they have to think about having a personal car and those kind of things.
Yeah, I think that is very disturbing to us, because you'll find that as a blind person, you are required to have a lot of money. Your life is expensive, and most of us find ourselves in positions where we don't have any even to spend. So
what are some of the expenses that perhaps you're talking about?
One is the assistive devices. What is an assistive device? It is a tool or a product that is designed specifically for use by a person with disability. Some of these assistive devices are like white canes. White cane is the...
is it the one that you're carrying?
Yes, the white stick that we used to walk with. This
How
one
much
is
does
folded.
it cost roughly?
Roughly, this one goes for 5,600. We have one for 1,500, and most people cannot afford this. So without this, you cannot walk. Secondly, we have the device that is called a braille machine that the students and pupils used to learn in class. That alone goes for 85,000 bob. It's equivalent to a pen that you get for 20 shillings. And then look at the telephone that we use. For me, I would need a telephone that has a software that will read the screen out loud for me. And if I want my phone to do more and to help me out more, it has to be more expensive. So for example, the most accessible phones that we have around in the market are iPhones. Most of us are out of reach of such phones. But we have Android phones that are quite cheaper, but they don't give you what an iPhone would give you.
In terms of the extra that you need.
Yeah, the extra, in fact, it would tell you colors. It would read money for you, because money is not very accessible. Yeah, so there are some apps with the iPhone that would help you go that mile of understanding your world better.
All right. In terms of the opportunities that are available for the persons who are visually impaired, what are some of the strides that we have made as a country to ensure equal opportunities, even for those who are visually impaired?
I think opportunities, we will talk about the socio-economic, because that's the space where we found ourselves in. And the Constitution also gives us some of political opportunities. But starting with the economic, the most immediate one is employment. And predominantly, blind people were always restricted to some kind of careers. One, if you passed your exams, you would do education, you would probably become a teacher. If you're lucky enough, and very lucky, and you are bright, you would become a lawyer, but there are very few. And then those who did not make it to education, we had a course called telephone operating, the telephone operators, those people who operate on switchboards. So, and that space is being now seen off, because now we don't use the switchboards with button the way we used to use.
Technology is changing this.
We have the touch screen switchboards. So that is an employment opportunity that is being taken very, very quickly. You come to things to do with access to procurement opportunities. You'll find that it's very difficult for a blind or a visually impaired person to be considered for these jobs. One, you must arrange that for you to be able to visit the government offices to look for those opportunities, you must have a sighted guide. And a guide who you cater for almost everything. You'll pay for them fare, you'll buy for them lunch.
So the costs again
become an issue. So you are not able to go for this opportunity on an equal basis with other people. Secondly, when you go there to the offices, the procurement officers will start having sympathy on you. How will this person be able to supply us? How will we get to know the right quality of products that we require for use in this office? And that really becomes a challenge because when
the perception is that you have to get someone else again to do it for
you, and then you might end up missing an opportunity because they are very competitive. Yet, if you're people with disabilities, all of you are supposed to benefit from it. Yes.
So how do we change this? How do we get people with visual impairment to get these opportunities?
Yeah, I think we would say changing of the attitudinal barriers because attitudinal barriers emanate from our personal feelings. We must understand that a blind person does not have another problem apart from lack of the ability to see, yes. Not even to see, to visualize, because you see with your brain, but you visualize what you see with your brain with your eyes. So if you're able, if you have a brain, you can easily do each and everything that a sighted person can do, or any other person who has a sight can do. And then another thing is sympathy over empathy. We find that people want to sympathize with our condition. And you see, sympathy does not provide a solution to us. It leaves us dependent on other people. What we want is empathy, where the change of attitude is geared towards accepting this person with their condition and looking at them at what alternative ways can we use these people, or can we give these people opportunity and they are able to deliver on an equal basis with others.
Okay. I'm informed our time is up, but you are launching a campaign.
Yes.
Tell us about that just very quickly before.
Yeah, this is an initiative that Friends of the Society, a group of people, want to come up with an initiative to help the state of prevention of avoidable blindness, because the situation is very bad. We are talking of 10 million people who are at risk of going blind, and our society only reaches 500,000 people. But there are other players in the field who reach up to 1.7 million people. So 80% of the 10 million
are getting lost out there.
There are conditions that can be treated. These are diseases like lifestyle diseases like hypertension, like diabetes, and if they are detected early and treated, these people, we would not be talking about them losing sight. So what we want to do, we want to raise the public awareness that the danger of one Kenyan out of 4 going blind tomorrow is real. Tomorrow you'll wake up, you don't have sight. And as a society, we are the people who are in charge of rehabilitation. We take in people who have already become blind and their situation cannot be reversed. And right now, it's very bad.
What are the statistics currently? How many people are visually impaired or blind?
Right now, we are talking of 350,000 people who are totally blind, 700,000 who are visual impairment. They're not totally blind, but they can see a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's over 1 million people. But I have these 10 million people who are at the risk of going blind, and I'm a chairman who doesn't want them to cross the divide. I want to have this million for us to be able to deal with, because even our capacity now is not able to reach all the cases that we are seeing out there.
Okay. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, our time is up, but we appreciate you finding time to just shed light on what you're doing to try and encourage Kenyans to go out there and get, tested, given that those numbers don't look good. If you're saying we can be able to save them, then we need to talk about it.
Thank you very much.
Well, we have been talking to Samson Waweru, who is the chairperson of the Kenya Society for the Blind. This is where we put a cap on your health. But before we move to business, paralysis across the country's public health facilities is looming as a cash crunch begins to hit the Kenya